Alright. Hello, hello, hello. My name is Levi, and today I will be talking about why Hispanic immigrant parents choose to teach their American born children Spanish while others don't. I'm joined by Sage, Yoli, Fernanda, and Cami, and I'll give them a minute to introduce themselves.
Sorry. Um, I'm Sage. I'm 19, and I don't know Spanish.
Hi, I'm Yoli. I'm 19. I know Spanish.
I'm Fernanda. I'm 19 and I also speak Spanish.
Hello, I'm Camila. I'm 19 and I also speak Spanish.
Alright. Now, we can get started on the first question. Did your parents teach you Spanish growing up? If so, how fluent are you in Spanish? If not, do you wish they had? All right, we can start off with Sage.
Teach me Spanish. My mom wanted me to learn, but my dad refused to teach me because it was too frustrating. I wish I would have known how to speak Spanish because it would have unlocked more opportunities for me as an adult and a chance to connect to a culture I don't know.
For me, my parents did teach me how to speak Spanish. It was a little bit of a struggle since they wanted me to learn English first through shows and other media, but it kind of struggled later on in life since my grammar's not as perfect as I wanted it to be. So I do wish they did teach me Spanish first and then later on English, so I have that more grammatical fluent in Spanish.
I'm Fernanda and my parents did teach me Spanish growing up. I'm fluent in Spanish, even more so than I am in English. And when I was growing up at home, my first language was Spanish, and I didn't learn English until I was in school.
My parents taught me Spanish growing up. My first language was Spanish. After a while, after maybe around 7 to 5 years old, that's when I started learning English. As a child, I had a very heavy Spanish accent, which made it quite difficult in learning English. I will say my fluently how fluently I am in Spanish, it does vary when it comes down to changing my accent in order to adapt to other Spanish speaking people. I'm very fluent when it comes down to speaking anyone in my culture.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. How has your ability or inability to speak Spanish affected your relationship with your family and culture?
All right, being real, I don't talk to any of my family in Mexico. And the language barrier has led me to not want to, unfortunately, because I feel like if I'm judged in the States for trying to speak Spanish, why would I try to speak Spanish in Mexico and be judged even more? I am extremely disconnected to my culture. I find it hard to call myself a Mexican because I lack so much of that part of me, if it makes sense. And because of my dad's refusal to teach the culture to me, I find no need to find it or reconnect with it because why at this point? I'm so old. I'm like I'm too old to make friends who are like Spanish speakers that I didn't already know beforehand. So, and I just get made fun of every time I try to speak Spanish. So, I quit while I'm ahead.
For me, I feel like with Spanish, it did affect my relationship a little bit. Not too much, because since I'm not that, I guess grammatically, I'm not that fluent in Spanish, and I do mess up a lot. So I feel like with that, it kind of like affected my family since they would try to correct me, but I was very hard headed, and I didn't want to be corrected. And so, but with that, it kind of affected me later on with myself and with my family because I feel like I don't understand them as the way that other people do, and I wish I did understand them better. With my family in El Salvador, I understand them a lot of the time, but I feel like there's some slang or some grammatics I don't really understand, and I wish I did understand it, which kind of like there's a miscommunication a lot of the times when I do speak with them.
My ability to speak Spanish has helped me develop a stronger relationship with my family, and I'm able to connect and to communicate effectively with my family in Mexico and keep that going. But that has affected me in kind of the opposite way. It's been more difficult to connect with the American side of my culture.
My ability to speak Spanish has really improved my relationship with my family and culture, making it very easily to communicate with all family members, including my cousins, grandparents, friends, and family. As connecting with my roots and my culture, every time I travel to my country, Dominican Republic, it's very easy. It's really easy for me to communicate with locals, as I understand both their slang and formal language. Now, sometimes when it comes down to newer slang words that I'm not familiar with, I will be confused on it. But once they explain it, I easily understand, and I can further improve my Spanish speaking, and I can use it and incorporate those slang words within my speaking.
Go on to our next question. Do you feel different from other second generational Hispanic Americans who either do or do not speak Spanish? How so?
I mean, of course, I feel different. I don't really feel the same as everybody else. Again, I feel extremely disconnected, and it's hard for me to make friends because of it. I mean, I may not visually seem Mexican, but like some people can pick up on it, and it catches me off guard when they do, because they're like they start speaking to me in Spanish, and I'm like, what the hell are you saying? I have no idea what's going on. And then you have to proceed through that whole awkward conversation. I don't really know Spanish, and then you get made fun of, and then you're like, I can't really be friends if you're willing to make fun of me for that. I personally haven't met anyone else who's like Mexican and doesn't speak Spanish. It seems like a really common thing for parents to teach their kids some sort of Spanish. I've never met someone with such a lack of language as I. So, I mean, I don't want to say I necessarily feel alone because I have my siblings, but I'm like wide enough to fit in with everybody else. So, like, I don't know. Do I feel Mexican? No.
For me, I feel like not really. I kind of don't feel very different with other second generation Hispanic Americans because a lot of them that I met, they've known Spanish most of the time. And so I kind of feel like, their Spanish is not perfect either. Mine isn't, of course. So I feel like we both connect, or me and that group connect with us not knowing grammatically or the correct grammatical terms in Spanish. But with other people who don't really speak Spanish, I would honestly, like, I understand it, and they would explain to me like the reason why they don't know Spanish. But I know a lot of them, they do try to attempt to speak it, even though their parents don't really teach it. But I feel like not really. I don't really feel a difference between other second generation Hispanics.
In my perspective, I don't really feel different from other second generation Hispanic Americans because whether they do or don't speak Spanish, I feel like nobody is truly born speaking two languages. Everybody's born speaking one language at home, and then they interact with their community, with their school, and they have to learn the second one. So I think there's always that language barrier that unites everybody.
I used to feel different from other second generation Hispanic Americans. Back then, I used to believe that if you were Hispanic or background of a Hispanic heritage, that you would automatically know Spanish. Over time, I started realizing that the more second generations I would meet, most of them had little to no lack of knowing Spanish or speaking Spanish. Some of them could speak it but couldn't read it. Others could read it but couldn't speak it. Some could understand it but couldn't speak or read it. And I used to wonder, how come they can't speak Spanish if they're Hispanic? If they're Mexican, shouldn't they speak Spanish? If there's some from this, both of their parents are Hispanic, why do they refuse to speak Spanish while how come I can speak Spanish but they can't? If I could easily understand and speak my own language with my own parents, how come they can't? As I got older, I realized that some of them just grew up different in a different home, in a different lifestyle than how I did. Um, my mother, she knew more Spanish and little to no English. As for my dad, he grew up in the U.S., went to a university in the U.S., so he know both Spanish and perfect English. So he would speak to me in both languages, making it easy for me to interact with him in both Spanish and English. But he would only speak Spanish at home, and the second we walk out of the house, it's only pure English.
Have you ever felt pressure from family, school, or society to speak either Spanish or English?
I feel pressure most of the time to speak Spanish. I feel like it's expected of me to speak a language I'm so disconnected with. Again, I get dogged on a lot. I have a current professor actually who found out he knew my last name was Galindo, and he tried to ask me why I didn't know and how I should be connected to my culture. He's an amazing professor, by the way. But to see that it's like such a disconnect from it, it really does suck. I don't know. It's just like no matter what I do, I won't ever be Mexican, if that makes sense. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure. But like, how am I supposed to start learning and be embracing the culture and the language if my own father's not willing to speak upon it? You know what I mean? So
For me, I feel like there was a lot of pressure, especially when I was younger, since my Spanish was really bad as a kid, and so people in my family or my yeah people in my family, they would basically almost bully me into learning more Spanish. Um, and like I mentioned before, I was kind of hard headed, so I didn't really want to learn Spanish. And more, it wasn't because I didn't want to. It's more of the embarrassment of me learning, making mistakes, learning again, making more mistakes. And I kind of, when as a kid, I felt like there was no point in me improving. But as I got older, I realized really should improve, because how am I supposed to speak with other family members in other countries if I don't know how to speak Spanish? Or for example, if I want children and I want to teach them Spanish so they can speak to my parents, how am I supposed to do that if I'm not fluent in Spanish?
I have felt pressure from my family and my school and society to speak either Spanish or English. When I was young and at home, I would speak English to my cousins and my parents or my uncles and my aunts. They would all look at it in a negative way, and they would always encourage us to speak Spanish in the home, even though we were used to speaking English to other kids our age at school in English. And in school, I used when I first went into pre-K, I used to speak only Spanish. I had no knowledge that English was even a thing, and then everybody started speaking a different language that I didn't understand, and everybody looked at me in a different way, and everybody pressured me to learn and to know what they were saying, and I was the only one that didn't know what was going on. So it kind of did take me a while to catch up in school to learn English in the same way that everybody else knew.
I have felt pressured more from school, my school life. As a child, my parents sent me to Dominican Republic to study at school over there. My first language again was Spanish. I was learning how to write and speak Spanish. But the second they brought me back to the U.S. and they enrolled me in school, a lot of the teachers were finding it weird that I was able to speak English, but I had zero understanding of how to read or understand the English writing. I would struggle a lot in school as they would try to teach me language arts or anything that was English literature. I had zero to no comprehension of what I was reading. I had a hard time reading things as I would read it as if I was reading Spanish. A lot of teachers try to tell my parents that I needed to learn more English, so my parents eventually started punishing me at home when wouldn't be able to read something in English. My mom would always enforce that I can speak English at home. She just didn't want me speaking too much English, as she wanted to understand me majority of the time. My dad, on the other hand, if I couldn't speak something in English, he'd rather just not me speak English at all. And if I couldn't speak Spanish at all, he didn't want me to speak Spanish and just speak English. Eventually, as I got older, I started understanding more English. Some teachers were helping me with reading English and understanding the English vocabulary, which helped me improve when it came down to reading bigger, stronger words in English. But this, uh, um, I started to less understand my Spanish roots, and I started forgetting how to read my Spanish. I could only speak it and barely read it as I started getting older, since I started focusing more on English. I started reconnecting with my roots after I got older, around high school, 15, 16, 17 years old. I started taking Spanish classes to understand more Spanish literature so I can have a more stronger understanding of both languages again.
Do you believe speaking Spanish has helped or hindered your experiences in school or work?
Huh. Hindered. uh, uh, sorry, hold on. I can see nothing but doom as I look at this. Not speaking Spanish has led me to just not excel in a lot of stuff. I took 2 years of like Spain Spanish, and it was the worst experience of my life. It literally sucked. Huh? No, like Spain Spanish. Like they refused to teach me like any like level, just Spain Spanish. It sucked. I didn't understand. I would try to ask my dad, and he'd be reluctant. Of course, he doesn't. For some reason, he doesn't like speaking Spanish, which I don't understand. But not my prerogative, not my business. I mean, overall, it's really hindered my experience in both school and work. Again, I get a lot of questions about do you speak Spanish, especially at my job, because it's very like socially interacting and asking people. Because I work in service, so just seeing it's also really sad because you see some person who's just been okay. Okay, let me level with you. Let me level with you. Seeing someone get out of construction and you can see that they're visibly exhausted and bring their kids into the store. Not one of them speak a lick of English, and then my coworkers don't know anything. I can't really understand Spanish, but there are a few keywords that I can pick up on. So it's like two broken languages coming into one. It is the most soul crushing thing to have somebody look at you, recognize your face, and be like, you're Latin, I know you are, and then speak to you in fluent Spanish, and you have no idea what they're saying. No idea, and you just pray that you get their order right, and you pray that they're all right. I've even had to remake a few sandwiches because I feel bad. You know what I mean? I really wish that I could have those opportunities to be able to connect with people, even if it's just a stupid job experience. I'd be able to help people better. And school, yeah, same thing, hindered.
For me, I feel like it did help me, especially when I got my first job. Since my Spanish wasn't that good before I had my first job, I would always struggle with grammar and pronunciation. But then after that, after I got my first job, it was a lot of Spanish speakers in that job. Like 90% of them were Spanish speakers. So I was able to practice at least my Spanish a little bit, and over time I was able to improving my grammar, my pronunciation, which I really did believe it helped me now to to the job I have now, honestly. Because with that, I work in call center, and a lot of them, maybe 60% of them, 70 are Spanish speakers, and it is a little bit more complicated, with keywords, terms and things like that. And I feel like my first job really improved my Spanish a lot to the Spanish that I have now. It's still not perfect. I believe it will never be perfect since both languages is mixing together. You switch back and forth with both languages. So I feel like no matter how much practice or how much experience that you have in Spanish or in English, you will never be perfect in either or. So even then, I believe that the Spanish that I have now is so much better than the Spanish I had before as a child.
I believe speaking Spanish has helped in general my experiences in both school and work. Beyond when I was learning English, that really hindered me. Like just only speaking Spanish and not knowing anything else, that really hindered me in my elementary school. But once I got English down, it went up from there. Like everything was incredible. I could speak to my family, I could speak to my friends, I could communicate with everybody, and I could be clear in what I wanted to say and how I wanted to express myself. So I would say that Spanish speaking Spanish has helped me in my experiences in both school and work. Also, being bilingual really exercises your brain. So
Speaking Spanish has really improved and helped my experiences both in school and work. The last, I would say, the last 10 to 13 years of my life have been pretty much translating for my mom. I've always been translating for her when it came down to doctor appointments, school appointments, any type of conference or anything that required her to understand English. I was always translating for her. Eventually, when I got to school, there would be students that didn't know nothing of English, zero English, and I would translate for them time to time so they can better understand their work. I made lots of friends that barely knew English. I made friends with them as they could understand better their school life experience. Once I graduated from school and I went into the work field, majority of my clients and work was always Spanish speaking customers. A good chunk of like 98% of our clients are mostly Spanish speaking clients. Majority of my work was always translating government documents from English to Spanish, translating birth certificates, divorce certificates, marriage certificates, and even criminal records from Spanish to English or English to Spanish. I would help customers fill out applications when it came down to food stamps, government, immigration, all that stuff. I would help them fill out applications in order for them to understand whatever work that they needed help with. With anything, if they needed someone that needed to speak both Spanish and English, they would look for me as I can easily fluently switch from both languages.
Do you feel more comfortable speaking English or Spanish in different social situations? Why?
English. I don't know Spanish. That's all I have to say.
For me, definitely English, since it is technically my first language, and I still feel a little not embarrassed, but I do get still nervous whenever I do speak Spanish with anyone, literally anyone who speaks Spanish fluently, compared to other people who are are bilingual. So definitely English, I feel more comfortable in.
I feel more comfortable speaking English in situations like school or work or more outside, like out and about situations. Also, speaking with different Hispanic Americans, I feel more comfortable speaking English because I feel like not everybody has the same accent, not everybody has the same language. Some people speak Spanish, some people don't speak Spanish. So I am more comfortable speaking English with other Hispanic Americans. And Spanish, I feel more comfortable speaking at home or in community, like Hispanic community events.
I feel more comfortable speaking Spanish when it comes down to speaking at home, work, and sometimes school. When it comes down to speaking with my friends, I prefer speaking in English, but majority of my time I'm always speaking Spanish. Even if I'm alone in my own house, I'm always speaking Spanish. Um, unless sometimes I do feel uncomfortable that the second I know someone's more fluent in one language, my my brain tells me I need to speak that language for them to better understand me. So if I know that they're more fluent in Spanish, but they want to learn English, my brain only tells me speak Spanish so they can better understand you. Don't speak English. Even if they tell me, "Oh no, you could speak English. I will understand you." My brain is like, "No, I want you. I want to speak Spanish because I know you're going to fluently understand everything I'm going to say."
If you have children in the future, would you teach them Spanish? Why or why not?
There is a very low, extremely low chance that I will ever have children. In the absolute last case scenario of me having children, I mean, I would love to say yes, but I wouldn't have the resources to say yes, if that makes sense. I don't know Spanish. I'm pretty sure the person I know, I get married to, won't know another language because I feel so disconnected to my own. I say my own like it's mine. But no, probably, I'd like to say yes, but it's such a low possibility. Probably not. And the Spanish they speak in schools is not, you know, directly authentic, if it makes sense. It's always proper. It's like teaching an American to speak British, not speak British, but like speak British English. The difference in grammar and vocabulary are two way off things. So probably not. I would be a horrible teacher, and I, unless it was someone like one of my friends that I really trusted, I probably wouldn't have a kid go through that embarrassment.
Um, yeah, I feel like if I would have children in the future, I hope, I would definitely teach them Spanish so they could talk to my other family members. But I feel like if my Spanish is not good now, their Spanish is gonna be even worse than mine. Like it's gonna be broken, no sabo Spanish, like worse than mine. But I have hope for them. Maybe they'll be the one that teach me Spanish. Hopefully.
If I do have children in the future, I would definitely teach them Spanish, and I would because I feel like it would increase their chances at having a better job, at communicating better with their peers, helping other people that don't speak English. It'll help them connect with their community with everybody around them. It'll increase their opportunities at being successful. So I will definitely do that for them.
In the future, if I have children, I will definitely teach them Spanish. I want them to be able to communicate with me at home, to be able to communicate with my family members, with my husband's family members, and even when we go to travel to our country where it's only Spanish speaking, I want them to be able to communicate with them and other Hispanics. It will help improve their school, home, and even work life, as well as if they ever choose to travel and go somewhere else, like Europe, and let's say they were to go to Spain, France, or Italy, they could be able to speak Spanish without being discriminated for speaking English and being recognized as an American.
Final question: what do you think the future of Spanish in the U.S. looks like for second and third generational Hispanic Americans?
In all reality, even though I don't speak Spanish myself, I know this place is going to hell. If I'm being frank with you, with the current political climate of things, there's a lot of issues surrounding anyone who remotely looks non-white. Like, of course, there's police brutality, but now you have ICE actively going into schools and trying to detain people illegally. Like, there was just something about an ICE agent smashing a woman's car window open to get to her, which is illegal without a warrant. The future of Spanish in the U.S. is very worrying. You know what I mean? I may not speak Spanish, you know what I mean? And I may not look Spanish or any Latin at all, but I'm worried for people who are. I think it's very crucial and critical to understand the history that comes with Spanish speaking Americans. Specifically, I want to touch on like Mexican Americans because they were here first. If you like look in like Texas, California, there's completely Latinos and Mexicans and stuff like that. And the reason is because they were there first. And so the idea that this land is the white man's land, like get the hell out of here, bozo. Like low key. Sorry, I don't know if you can put that in. It's so irritating to see this whole idea of white suffrage, which doesn't really necessarily exist, you know? So to put people down just because they speak Spanish, I mean, the culture is endangered, the language is endangered, amongst with others. But if you think about it, I guess in my case, like, because my kids, if I were to have them, would never know Spanish. They would never know that culture because I myself was disconnected from it. So that in turn endangers the culture. Not saying that this is the case for everybody, but the less people that speak it, the less people that know it, then the less it's out there. And that's why you have a bunch of different like languages dying out and cultures dying out. And it's so hard to recover lost cultures and places like that.
For me, I think honestly, I agree with Sage. I feel like a lot of the Spanish now, just in general, we don't speak it perfectly. Honestly, we know two languages. In both languages, we don't even speak it perfectly. And so, trying to teach a kid broken Spanish or broken English, it's not gonna work out at the end of the day. And then their broken Spanish is gonna pass on to their children. At the end of the day, they might as well just learn English. It sounds mean, it sounds brutal, but you're not going to communicate with other people who are perfectly fluent in Spanish, with someone who speaks broken Spanish. So I feel like at the end of the day, honestly, society is not gonna learn Spanish. At least here in the U.S. Um, Especially how things are too, with racism or assumptions and things like that. I feel like for a lot of people's safety, they prefer not to speak Spanish either. Besides outside of their house, and with that, they're gonna probably gonna lose a lot of their Spanish speaking because of that reason. Um, with the direction that we're going to as of right now, honestly, I feel like more and more people are going to lose Spanish, not show their children for their safety, or at least to be assumed by other people. And honestly, it's going to go downhill from here. If it's bad now, it's going to be worse later on.
I don't think it looks very good for the. Okay. Yeah. Thank you. I don't think it looks very good for the future of Spanish in the United States for second or third generation Hispanic Americans. In my personal experience, I know a lot of Hispanic Americans who don't speak Spanish or their parents haven't taught them Spanish for their own safety because they think that Americanizing their children or, yeah, like diving them more into the American culture or speaking perfect English and not knowing Spanish makes them in a way safer or more acceptable for other white Americans. And in this increasingly hostile environment that's becoming it's becoming even harder to be a Spanish speaker publicly or to be a minority, even remotely looking like a minority is looking even more dangerous. So I think it's going to become more widespread. People are not going to teach their children Spanish, and they're not going to dive them into the culture, or they're just going to Americanize them even more.
I believe the future of Spanish in the U.S. could look pretty much very differently for both second and third generation Hispanic Americans, depending on the area that they're living in. In certain areas, it's more white populated or more English speaking populated, to the point where some parents don't really enforce the Spanish speaking as much, and the children don't feel the need to speak English as much or focus on their English on their Spanish speaking roots. Within those areas, I could see the population of Spanish speakers decreasing in comparison to certain areas, like for an example, in Georgia, places like Duluth, Wilburn, those areas are more Spanish speaking populated. There's a lot of the Hispanic community is much higher than as if there were of English speakers. Lots of people who live around these areas, they feel the need to speak Spanish. Some of my coworkers back then, they didn't really speak Spanish as much. They didn't want to learn, they didn't feel the need to learn. The second they went into the work field, they realized majority of their clients were all Spanish speaking, which enforced them to learn more Spanish and connect more with their roots, as they felt that if they wanted to make more money or increase in their work field, they needed to learn Spanish in order to better communicate with their clients and better relate to them.
All right, I want to say thank you for coming out today.
No problem.
I really enjoyed y'all's responses, and it was very much helpful. And yes, goodbye. Do you believe speaking Spanish has helped or hindered your experiences in school or work?
Fuck. Okay. You gotta give me a second. This is like a doom session, bro. Because I got nothing but negative shit to say. You like hit me in one of like my worst insecurities, bro. And I'm not insecure about much. I know. And that's what pisses me off because you need it. Hold on, let me see this.
You think you're okay with me? It's only speaking Spanish. Can we have a penguin? Just imagine, like, on the off chance that you just have a kid, you still have like little things floating around speaking Spanish. You're like, what do you say?
Right. It's a very low chance I'm gonna have kids. And even if
I'm
I
gonna
do,
start talking to it. I'm like, in Spanish. I'll just, oh, yeah, because I don't know the
the
gender.
cat is the closest thing.
And if it's an animal, I'll just be speaking Spanish to it. I told you to sit down.
Let me show you this photo. Oh wait, this is my cat. No,
It's just on life.
she was just looking at me like that, and I was like, what the hell?
She's smiling at you.
Okay.
You bring the joy in her
Real
eyes.
quick, because I saw this video a while ago. I said the charcuterie board shit is easy.
In the future, when I have children, I will force them to speak Spanish.
Make sure the whole
It's like they are learning
every
it.
time the kids, what do I always finish? Think of this conversation. Think of this.
Your auntie Sage. Uh-oh.
You are not going to be like her.
I just call you, you come over. You just beat up my kid. Look at me. You want to turn out like me? I don't know Spanish.
Sad.
If they go to Spain, they're gonna become Machu Picchu's anyway.
I don't know.
Did you know that if you go to France and you speak English, they do not like you?
People are just mean. And
And then if you speak Spanish, they like you. They just don't like English speaking people.
If I do have children in the future, I will definitely.
Wait, a little too close. Okay.
eating the mic.
Sorry.
Are you okay? I like it like this.
I was like, wait, it's a little too close. I'm like,
You're so funny.
It's so funny.
say that 1, 2 for the
mic.
mic.
What if we just like put it on her mouth? my intrusive thoughts were like, what if we just like just put it on your lips? Like,
You're gonna need to do so much editing on this.
Are you okay? It's okay, guys.
You could include.
It's okay. We'll be fine.
the bloopers.
Part of that.
Oh, hell no. That shit
The
out.
bloopers is it's gonna be Sage being like, no, because I don't speak Spanish, and then burst out laughing.
And then you